The clouds rolled in without warning, turning what had been a bright autumn afternoon into something darker. The sky transformed from clear blue to angry gray in what felt like minutes. 8-year-old Lily clutched her backpack straps tighter as she walked along the familiar route home from school. She hadn't brought an umbrella. The weather report that morning had promised sunshine all day. The first drops hit her nose and forehead like tiny cold fingers. Lily quickened her pace, knowing she was still 15 minutes from home. Other kids had already scattered, some picked up by parents in cars, others running ahead in groups of 2s and 3s. Being the new kid in town meant Lily often walked alone. "Oh no," she whispered as the scattered drops turned into a proper shower. She pulled her jacket hood up, though it would offer little protection against what was coming. The rain quickly became a downpour, drumming against the sidewalk and turning small divots in the concrete into puddles. Lily broke into a jog, careful not to slip. Water splashed around her sneakers with each step, soaking through the fabric. She was about to cross the street when something caught her eye. A figure struggling at the bottom of the small hill that led to Main Street. Through the curtain of rain, she made out the shape of an elderly man in a wheelchair. He was pushing at the wheels, but they weren't moving forward. Instead, they seemed to be sinking into the softening earth at the edge of the sidewalk, where it had no curb. Each time he pushed, the wheels spun slightly before sinking deeper into the forming mud. A car rushed past, spraying water that nearly reached the man. He raised a hand to shield his face, then resumed his efforts to free himself. Lily hesitated. Her mom always told her to come straight home, especially in bad weather. But the old man looked so helpless there and no one else was stopping. Maybe someone else will help him, she thought, looking around. But the sidewalks had emptied as people sought shelter from the sudden storm. The few cars that passed were moving quickly, drivers focused on getting where they needed to go. The rain was coming down harder now, plastering Lily's dark hair to her forehead despite her hood. She shifted from foot to foot, watching as the elderly man made another attempt to move his wheelchair. His face showed a mixture of determination and worry that made Lily's heart squeeze tight in her chest. Taking a deep breath, she changed direction and splashed her way toward him. "Do you need help?" she called out when she was close enough to be heard over the rain. The old man looked up, surprise washing over his weathered face. Raindrops clung to his gray eyebrows and the deep lines around his eyes. "I'm stuck," he said, voice gravelly but kind. "Wheel caught in this mud. Should have checked the weather before heading out today." He tried to smile, but Lily could see he was uncomfortable, his clothes growing heavier with water by the second. "I can help push," Lily offered, moving behind the wheelchair. She set her backpack down on the ground and positioned her hands on the handles that rose from the back of the chair. "You're just a little thing," the man said, twisting to look at her. "Name's Tom, what's yours?" "I'm Lily. I'm stronger than I look," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The chair seemed huge compared to her small frame. Tom nodded appreciatively. "Well, I'm grateful, Lily. Been stuck here almost 10 minutes. Not many folks stop these days." Lily pushed, using all her weight, but the wheelchair barely moved. The wheels had sunk deep into the softening ground. Rain continued to pour down on them, creating small rivulets that ran down the slight incline, making the mud even softer. "It's really stuck," Lily said, catching her breath. She looked around, trying to think of what to do next. Her mom would know, but Mom was at home, probably starting to worry where she was. Tom sighed. "Maybe you should go on home, get yourself dry. Someone with a car might stop eventually." But something in his voice told Lily he didn't really believe that, and she couldn't just leave him sitting in the pouring rain. "Let me try something else," she said. She moved to the front of the wheelchair and examined how the wheels were stuck. "If we turn it a little bit, maybe the wheels can get on the harder part of the sidewalk." Tom nodded, impressed by her thinking. "Worth a try." Working together, with Tom pushing on one wheel and Lily pulling on the other side, they managed to rotate the chair slightly. It was still stuck, but at a different angle now. "One more big push," Lily encouraged, moving behind the chair again. She planted her feet, counted to 3, and pushed with everything she had. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a squelching sound, the wheels pulled free of the mud's grasp. "You did it!" Tom exclaimed, his face lighting up. "Well done, Lily." Pride bloomed in Lily's chest, warming her despite her soaked clothes. She picked up her backpack, now spotted with mud, and slung it over her shoulder. "We need to get up this hill," she said, looking at the incline ahead of them. It wasn't steep, but it would be challenging with the wheelchair. I can manage now that I'm unstuck, Tom assured her. But when he tried to push himself forward, the wheels slipped on the wet sidewalk. I'll help, Lily insisted, positioning herself behind the chair again. Together they made slow progress up the hill, Lily pushing while Tom guided the wheels. A car drove by, closer to the curb than it should have been, sending a wave of water over them. Lily gasped as the cold splash hit her legs but kept pushing. People should be more careful, Tom grumbled, wiping water from his face. You're getting soaked helping an old man like me. It's okay, Lily said, though she was shivering now. I was already wet anyway. They reached the top of the hill where there was a row of shops with awnings. Tom guided them toward a bakery with a wide overhang. Finally, out of the direct downpour, Lily moved to stand beside the wheelchair, pushing wet strands of hair from her face. Thank you, Tom said, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled at her. Not many would stop to help an old-timer like me. Lily shrugged, suddenly shy under his grateful gaze. Anyone would have helped. Tom shook his head. No, they wouldn't. I was sitting there quite a while before you came along. He looked at her curiously. Shouldn't you be heading home? Your parents will be worried. The mention of her parents made Lily glance anxiously down the street. Yeah, I should go. Mom's probably watching out the window by now. Where do you live? Is it far? Tom asked, concern evident in his voice. Pinecrest Apartments, Lily replied. About 10 more minutes that way. She pointed down the street. Tom's eyebrows rose. That's where I'm heading to. I live in the building next to Pinecrest, Oakwood Senior Living. Lily's eyes widened. Really? We just moved there 3 weeks ago. Mom says it's close to her new job. Small world, Tom smiled. Tell you what, why don't we wait a few minutes to see if this lets up a bit? Then I'll roll alongside you the rest of the way home. Least I can do after your heroics. Lily nodded, relieved she wouldn't have to walk the rest of the way alone in the storm. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the rain bounce off the pavement. So what grade are you in? Tom asked. Third, Lily replied. At Roosevelt Elementary. Good school. I used to teach music at the high school years back, Tom said. Retired now, of course. You were a music teacher? What did you teach? Lily asked, her interest piqued. Mostly piano and band. Some choir too when they needed me, Tom explained. His eyes took on a distant look as if seeing something from long ago. Music was my life. Still is, really. Though these days I mostly just play for myself. I like music, Lily offered. Mom plays old songs in the car sometimes. I don't know how to play anything, though. Tom nodded thoughtfully. Never too late to learn. Music stays with you forever, unlike a lot of other things in life. The rain began to ease slightly, no longer coming down in sheets, but in a steady patter. Tom looked up at the sky. Might be as good as it gets for a while, he observed. Ready to make a dash for home? Lily nodded, moving behind his wheelchair again. I can help push. You're a kind soul, Lily, Tom said softly. Your parents raised you right. They set off down the street together, Lily occasionally helping push when they encountered small inclines. The rain continued to fall, but somehow it didn't seem as cold or unwelcome as before. There was something comforting about helping Tom, about having a purpose in the storm, rather than just trying to escape it. As they approached their neighboring apartment complexes, Lily spotted a familiar figure standing under an umbrella near the entrance to Pinecrest. That's my mom, she called out. She's looking for me. Her mother's face transformed from worry to relief when she spotted Lily. Then confusion crossed her features as she noticed Tom. Lily. I was so worried. Who's this? She asked, hurrying toward them. This is Tom, Lily explained proudly. His wheelchair got stuck in the mud, so I helped him. He lives next door at Oakwood. Her mother's expression softened as she looked at Tom. Thank you for keeping an eye on her. Tom chuckled. Other way around, ma'am. Your daughter's the hero today. Rescued an old man who should have known better than to go out without checking the forecast. As they stood talking in the rain, something had shifted in Lily's world. She didn't know it yet, but this chance meeting would change her life in ways she couldn't imagine. For now, though, all she felt was a warm glow of happiness despite her sodden clothes and squelching shoes. Sometimes the biggest miracles start with the smallest acts of kindness, like a little girl stopping to help when she could. Have just walked on by. Lily's mother rushed forward. Her umbrella tilted against the rain as she reached her daughter. I was so worried when you didn't come home on time, she said, wrapping one arm around Lily's shoulders while keeping the umbrella over them both. "You're soaked to the bone." "I had to help Tom, Mom," Lily explained, looking up at her mother with wide eyes still bright with the satisfaction of having done something important. His wheelchair was stuck in the mud down by Carter Street. Her mother turned to Tom with a grateful smile. "Thank you for looking after her on the way back." Tom shook his head, raindrops flicking from the brim of his old baseball cap. "Your daughter's the one who deserves thanks. I'd still be sitting there if not for her. She's quite something, your Lily." Lily's cheeks flushed with pride at the compliment. Few adults ever spoke about her that way, like she mattered. "Well, we can't leave you out in this weather," Lily's mother said, glancing at the nearby Oakwood Senior Living building. "Do you need help getting home?" Tom hesitated, then gestured to his right wheel, which was making an odd scraping sound. "Might have gotten something caught when we were stuck in the mud. It's making the chair pull to one side." "Let me see," Lily said, kneeling beside the wheel despite her already soaked jeans. She peered underneath and pointed. "There's a stick jammed in here." Her mother bent down for a closer look. "You're right. Hold this, please," she said, handing the umbrella to Tom. She carefully worked the stick free, her hands becoming muddy in the process. "Much obliged," Tom said when she stood up, handing the umbrella back. "I don't mean to be a bother." "It's no bother at all," Lily's mother assured him. She glanced at her daughter, whose teeth had begun to chatter slightly. "I'm Alice, by the way. We should all get inside before we catch cold. Would you like us to help you to your door?" Tom nodded gratefully. "If it's not too much trouble." "Apartment 103, ground floor." Together they made their way to Oakwood, with Alice holding the umbrella over Tom while Lily pushed the wheelchair. Despite the rain pelting down around them, there was something comforting about working together. When they reached Tom's door, he fumbled with cold fingers to retrieve his key. The apartment beyond was tidy but lived in, with books stacked on side tables and framed photographs covering most of one wall. "Please, come in for a minute and dry off," Tom offered, wheeling himself inside and flicking on lights. "Least I can do?" "I've got hot chocolate in the pantry." Alice hesitated, looking down at Lily's soaked form. "We should get home and get changed, but thank you." "Just for 5 minutes," Lily pleaded, her eyes already wandering to a beautiful wooden piano that sat in the corner of Tom's living room. "Please, Mom." Alice relented with a small smile. 5 minutes, then straight home for hot showers. While Tom busied himself in the kitchenette, Lily gravitated toward the piano, her fingers hovering just above the keys without touching them. "Do you play?" Tom asked, returning with a kitchen towel that he offered to Alice. Lily shook her head. "No, but I always wanted to learn. Music lessons weren't in the budget where we lived before," Alice explained, drying her hands. "And with the move and new job, there hasn't been time to look into it here." Tom's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Well, you're looking at a retired music teacher. Taught for 42 years before the stroke slowed me down." He patted the wheelchair armrest. "Still play, though. Can't keep these old fingers away from the keys." "You were a music teacher?" Lily asked, her voice full of wonder. "At Roosevelt High School for most of my career," Tom confirmed. "I also gave private lessons right here in this apartment building. The community room downstairs has a piano, too. Not as nice as mine, but it does the trick for beginners." Alice accepted a mug of hot chocolate from Tom, her expression thoughtful. "Roosevelt High? That's in the same district as Lily's elementary school." "Small world," Tom said, handing Lily her own mug with marshmallows floating on top. "The school district has a good music program. Or at least it did when I was teaching." Lily sipped her hot chocolate, leaving a small marshmallow mustache on her upper lip. "Could I touch the piano?" she asked shyly. Tom smiled. "Of course. That's what it's there for." Lily carefully set her mug down and approached the piano with the reverence of someone entering a sacred space. She pressed one key, her eyes widening at the clear note that rang out. "C," Tom said. "That's middle C, the heart of the piano." Lily pressed it again, then the white key next to it. "That's D," Tom explained. "And next comes E. Do you know the song Mary Had a Little Lamb?" Lily nodded eagerly. "It starts with E, then D, then C. Like this." Tom wheeled himself next to her and played the simple sequence with his right hand. "Now you try." With careful concentration, Lily pressed the same keys, her face lighting up when she recognized the beginning of the familiar tune. Alice watched, something soft crossing her features. She's always loved music. Sings all the time at home. A natural, Tom said with approval. He continued guiding Lily through the simple song, his patience evident as she worked through each note. When they finished the song, Lily looked up at him with shining eyes. That was amazing. I played a real song. You certainly did, Tom agreed. You've got a good ear and careful fingers. Those are the makings of a pianist. We should go now, Alice said gently, noting that the rain had finally begun to ease outside the window. Lily needs to get into dry clothes. Lily reluctantly stepped away from the piano. Thank you for showing me, Tom. Anytime, Tom replied. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, in fact, if your mother agrees, you could come back sometime. I could show you more. Alice looked surprised. You mean for lessons? That's very kind, but we couldn't impose. Tom waved away her concern. Teaching is what keeps these old bones moving. Since my Martha passed 2 years ago, the days can get long. I'd welcome the company, and Lily here has potential. At the mention of his late wife, Alice's expression softened further. I'm sorry for your loss. Tom nodded toward one of the framed photographs on the wall. A smiling woman with silver hair and kind eyes. 57 years together. Today's the anniversary, actually. I was visiting her at Oak Hill Cemetery when the rain caught me. A look of understanding passed between the adults. Lily, meanwhile, had moved to examine the photographs more closely. Tom, she said suddenly, pointing to one of the pictures. Who are these people? Tom wheeled closer. That's my last piano recital before retiring. All my students from that year. Lily's finger moved to a young woman standing at the end of the group. She looks like my Grandma Rose in her old pictures. Tom squinted at the photograph, then looked at Lily more carefully. What's your grandmother's name? Rose Chen, Alice supplied. She grew up in this town, actually. Moved away for college and never came back. She's my mother. Tom's mouth fell open slightly. Rose Chen was your mother? She was one of my most promising students. Class of '87, played Chopin at the state competition. Alice stared at him. That's right. She won second place. She still has the trophy at her house in Portland. Good heavens, Tom murmured, looking from Alice to Lily with fresh eyes. Rose always said she'd come back someday to thank me properly. Said I changed her life with those lessons. She did come back, Alice said softly, just not in the way she expected. We moved here because of her stories about this town. She always said it was a place where miracles happened. The three of them fell silent, absorbing the strange coincidence that had brought them together. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, though water still dripped from the eaves. I think, Tom said finally, his voice thick with emotion, that this might be what Martha would call a sign. Me getting stuck in the rain today. Lily coming along to help, finding out you're Rose's family. He shook his head in wonder. Do you believe in signs? Lily asked, clutching her now empty mug. I didn't used to, Tom admitted. But the older I get, the more I see patterns in life that are too perfect to be just chance. Alice checked her watch. We really should go now. But perhaps... She hesitated, then continued. Perhaps Lily could come visit again. If you're serious about the piano... Tom's face broke into a wide smile. Nothing would make me happier. How about Tuesdays and Thursdays after school? No charge, of course. We couldn't accept lessons for free, Alice protested. Tom looked at Lily, who was practically bouncing with excitement. Tell you what, Lily can pay me by helping me organize my sheet music. It's in terrible shape, and these old eyes aren't what they used to be. Lily nodded eagerly. I can do that. I'm very organized. My teacher says so. Alice laughed, a warm sound that seemed to chase away the last of the afternoon's gloom. Well, how can I argue with that? Thank you, Tom. Truly. As they prepared to leave, Tom wheeled himself to a small desk and scribbled something on a notepad. My phone number, he explained, tearing off the page and handing it to Alice. In case anything comes up. At the door, Lily turned back impulsively and gave Tom a quick hug. See you Tuesday? Tom's eyes misted over as he watched them leave. The little girl skipping despite her wet clothes, already planning what she would tell her grandmother on their next video call. He wheeled himself back to the piano and played a few chords, the rich sounds filling his empty apartment. For the first time in 2 years, the anniversary of Martha's passing didn't feel quite so heavy. Tom could almost hear her voice. Everything happens for a reason, Tommy. Perhaps she was right. After all, Tuesday couldn't come fast enough for Lily. At school on Monday, she could barely focus on her math worksheet, her mind constantly drifting to the piano waiting in Tom's apartment. When the final bell rang on Tuesday afternoon, she was the first one out the door, her backpack bouncing against her small shoulders as she raced toward the bus. "Someone's in a hurry," remarked the bus driver as Lily bounded up the steps. "I have piano lessons today," she announced proudly, settling into her usual seat behind the driver. "Piano, huh? Fancy," the driver said with a warm smile in the rearview mirror. Lily hugged her backpack to her chest, not bothering to correct his assumption that she was headed to some expensive music school rather than her elderly neighbor's apartment. It felt special either way. When the bus dropped her at the corner near home, Lily ran the 3 blocks to Oakwood, slowing only when she reached the front entrance. She smoothed her hair, took a deep breath, and pressed the buzzer for apartment 103. "Who's there?" Tom's voice crackled through the intercom. "It's Lily," she replied, bouncing slightly on her toes. The door buzzed open, and Lily made her way down the hallway, counting the numbers until she reached 103. Before she could knock, the door swung open, revealing Tom in his wheelchair, his face bright with welcome. "Right on time," he said, checking his watch. "A good quality in a musician." Lily followed him into the apartment, noticing changes since her visit 3 days earlier. The piano was now clear of the books and papers that had cluttered its surface, and a small wooden bench had been pulled up to just the right height for her. On the music stand sat a beginner's piano book, worn around the edges from years of use. "My mother said to give you this," Lily said, unzipping her backpack and pulling out a container of homemade cookies. "She says it's a thank you for the lessons." Tom accepted the container with a nod of appreciation. "Very thoughtful. We'll have some with milk after our lesson." He patted the bench. "Ready to begin?" For the next hour, Tom guided Lily through the basics of piano playing: proper posture, hand position, the names of the white keys, and simple finger exercises. He was patient but firm, correcting her gently when needed and praising her genuine efforts. "Music is a language," Tom explained as Lily practiced a 5-note scale over and over. "Just like you had to learn your ABCs before reading books, you need to train your fingers to speak piano." Lily nodded seriously, her small face set in concentration as she repeated the exercise. When she finally played it correctly 3 times in a row, her face broke into a wide grin. "I did it." "You certainly did," Tom agreed. "Now let's try putting those notes into a simple song." By the end of the hour, Lily could play Hot Cross Buns with careful precision. It wasn't perfect, but the pride shining in her eyes made Tom think of his first recital students from decades ago. That same mixture of accomplishment and wonder. As promised, they shared cookies and milk afterward, with Lily sitting cross-legged on the couch while Tom told stories about his teaching days. "Your grandmother was one of the most talented students I ever taught," he said, selecting a photograph album from the shelf beside him. "Here she is at the state competition." Lily leaned forward eagerly as Tom opened the album to reveal a teenage girl in a formal dress, seated at a grand piano, her hands poised above the keys and her expression intense. "That's Grandma Rose. She looks so young." 16 years old, Tom confirmed. Played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The audience was absolutely silent when she finished. "That's how you know it was something special." Lily traced her finger over the photograph. "Mom says I look like her." Tom tilted his head, studying Lily's face. "You have her eyes focused, seeing everything." When it was time to go, Tom handed Lily a small notebook. "Practice every day, even if it's just for 15 minutes. Write down what you practiced here and I'll check it on Thursday." Lily clutched the notebook as if it were made of gold. "I will, I promise." For the next 2 weeks, Lily kept her promise faithfully. Even on days without formal lessons, she would visit Tom after finishing her homework, sometimes just to sit and listen to him play, other times to show off a new skill she'd mastered. Alice noticed the change in her daughter. Lily had always been quiet and thoughtful, but since meeting Tom, she'd begun to shine with a new confidence. The move had been hard on her, leaving behind friends and familiar places for a new school where she knew no one. But now Lily had something that was hers alone, something special. One afternoon in late October, Lily arrived at Tom's apartment with red-rimmed eyes and a quivering chin. "What's wrong?" Tom asked as soon as he opened the door. Lily shrugged, trying to look casual and failing completely. "Nothing." Tom wheeled himself back to give her room to enter. I may be old, but my eyes still work just fine. Something's bothering you. Lily dropped her backpack by the door and walked listlessly to the piano bench. Some kids at school were mean today. Tom's face softened. What happened? There was a music assembly. The music teacher asked if anyone played an instrument, and I raised my hand and said I was learning piano. Lily's voice wavered. This boy named Danny laughed and said I was lying because I don't go to real lessons like his sister. He said learning from an old neighbor doesn't count. Tom was quiet for a moment, then wheeled himself to the bookshelf. Come here, Lily. She dragged her feet over to where he was pulling out a thick photo album different from the one he'd shown her before. This, he said, opening to the first page, is my first graduating class from Roosevelt High School, year 1978. The black and white photograph showed Tom, much younger but recognizable, standing with a group of teenagers holding various instruments. This boy here, Tom pointed to a tall, serious-looking teenager with a trumpet, went on to play with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and this girl, his finger moved to a smiling girl with braided hair, became a music professor at the State University. He turned the page, revealing more class photos through the years. This young man played at Carnegie Hall. This one wrote music for films. This girl here teaches music to deaf children using vibrations. Page after page, Tom showed Lily the faces of his former students and told her what they had accomplished. Do you know what all these students had in common? Tom asked finally. Lily shook her head. They all started right where you are, learning the basics, one note at a time. Some had fancy private teachers, some learned in school programs, and yes, some learned from neighbors or family members or church pianists. He closed the album gently. It's not who teaches you that matters, Lily. It's how much heart you put into learning. Lily's eyes had dried as she looked through the photos. Really? Really, Tom confirmed. And you know what else? You've learned more in 2 weeks than some students learn in 2 months. You have a gift. The compliment straightened Lily's shoulders. I have? Absolutely. Now let's see what you practiced this week. By the time Lily left that day, she was walking taller, her earlier hurt forgotten in the glow of Tom's encouragement. That night, Alice found Lily practicing finger exercises on the edge of the kitchen table while dinner was cooking. You really love this, don't you? She asked, stirring the pasta sauce. Lily nodded without pausing her finger movements. Tom says I have a gift, Alice smiled. He may be right. I was talking to Mrs. Klein at work today. She's on the community center board. They're planning a small holiday concert in December and looking for participants. I mentioned you might be interested. Lily's fingers stopped. Me? But I just started learning. Tom's been teaching for over 40 years. If he thinks you're ready to play something simple by December, I trust him. Lily considered this, her face serious. I could ask him tomorrow. When she brought up the concert during her Thursday lesson, Tom's eyes lit up. What a wonderful idea. We'll need to choose the right piece. Something you can master in 6 weeks. Can I do it? Lily asked anxiously. I've only been playing for 2 weeks. Tom wheeled himself to the piano and played a simple version of Silent Night, just one finger at a time for the melody. How does this sound? I could teach you to play this with your right hand, and by December maybe add some simple left-hand notes too. Lily sat beside him and tentatively picked out the first few notes, following his example. It's pretty, and perfect for beginners, Tom assured her. We'll have you ready. That evening, Tom made a phone call to the community center. The woman who answered seemed surprised at first, then increasingly interested as Tom explained his idea. It's been 2 years since I've been involved with any commu. Nighty music, Tom said. But I have a student now, extraordinary potential. And it got me thinking about all the other children in the neighborhood who might benefit from music education. By the time he hung up, Tom had volunteered to coordinate a small group of performers for the holiday concert, including reaching out to former students who still lived in town. For the first time since Martha's passing, Tom's calendar began to fill with appointments and plans. Each day had purpose beyond merely getting through the hours. When he looked at the photograph of his late wife before bed that night, he could almost hear her saying, "See? I told you there was still work for you to do." "You were right, old girl," Tom whispered to the empty room. As usual. November brought colder weather, bare trees, and a flurry of activity for Tom. His quiet apartment, once a place of solitude and memories, had become a hub of planning and music. The kitchen table disappeared under sheet music and program drafts for the upcoming holiday concert. Word had spread quickly. What had started as a simple idea for Lily to perform had grown into something much bigger. 5 of Tom's former students had agreed to participate, along with several children from the neighborhood who were taking music lessons elsewhere. "I never expected this kind of response," Tom confessed to Alice one afternoon as she dropped Lily off for her lesson. "The community center says they may need to move it to the high school auditorium if interest keeps growing." Alice smiled, unwinding her scarf. "People remember you, Tom. Mrs. Klein told me you used to organize the most popular concerts in town. She said tickets to your students' recitals were harder to get than tickets to professional shows." Tom waved off the compliment, though his eyes crinkled with pleasure. "That's an exaggeration, but we did put on good shows. Mom, can I show Tom what I practiced?" Lily interrupted, already pulling off her coat and heading for the piano. "Of course," Alice said. "I'll be back in an hour. I need to pick up groceries." Once Alice had left, Lily settled onto the piano bench and opened her notebook. "I practiced every day, just like you said. Even on Saturday when we visited my aunt." "That's dedication," Tom said approvingly. "Let's hear what you've accomplished." Lily placed her small hands on the keyboard and began to play Silent Night. Her right hand picked out the melody with growing confidence, while her left hand added simple chords on the first beat of each measure. It wasn't perfect. She hesitated at the transition points and missed a few notes, but the essence of the song shone through. "Wonderful progress," Tom said when she finished. "You've been working hard," Lily beamed at the praise. "Will I be ready for the concert?" "Without a doubt," Tom assured her. "Let's work on those transitions today." For the next 45 minutes, they focused on smoothing out the rough spots in Lily's performance. Tom was endlessly patient, demonstrating the same passage multiple times, explaining why certain fingerings worked better than others, and celebrating each small improvement. "Music is all about connection," he explained as they took a break for water. "When you play, you're connecting with everyone who's ever played that song before and everyone who will play it after you. You're also connecting with your audience. That's why it's important to play with feeling, not just correct notes." Lily nodded seriously, sipping her water. "But how do you add feeling? Think about what the song means to you," Tom suggested. "When you play Silent Night, what do you picture?" Lily thought for a moment. "Snow falling, Christmas trees with lights, family together." "Good. Hold those images in your mind when you play. The feeling will come through your fingers naturally." When Alice returned to pick her up, Lily played the song again, this time with a new expressiveness that made Tom glance at Alice with raised eyebrows. Alice's hand went to her heart as she listened, clearly moved by her daughter's playing. "That was beautiful, Lily," she said when the last note faded. "I was thinking about last Christmas, when Grandma Rose came to visit," Lily explained. "Remember how it snowed and we made those snow angels?" "I remember," Alice said softly. As they were preparing to leave, Tom handed Alice an envelope. "The program for the concert. We've set the date for December 18th at the high school auditorium. Lily will be performing in the first half." Alice opened the envelope and scanned the program. "This looks impressive, Tom. All these performers." "It's going to be special," Tom agreed. "And there's something else," he hesitated, then continued. "The high school principal visited yesterday. Apparently the music program has been struggling since funding cuts 3 years ago. He asked if I'd consider coming in as a volunteer consultant." "That's wonderful," Alice exclaimed. "Will you do it?" Tom nodded, looking both nervous and excited. "I think so. After all these years, I didn't expect to be back in a classroom. But," he glanced at Lily, "certain people have reminded me that music education matters." The following weeks flew by in a blur of preparation. Tom's phone rang constantly with calls from former students, community members, and parents of children who wanted to participate in future music programs. One crisp Saturday morning in early December, Lily arrived at Tom's apartment to find him surrounded by stacks of music books and folders. "The school delivered these yesterday," he explained, gesturing to the chaos around him. "All the materials from the music department. Some haven't been touched in years." Lily surveyed the mess with wide eyes. "That's a lot of stuff. Too much for these old hands to sort through alone," Tom admitted. "I don't suppose you'd like to help?" "You did say you were organized. I can help," Lily said eagerly. She dropped her backpack by the door and rolled up her sleeves. Where should we start? For the next 3 hours, they worked together to sort sheet music by difficulty level and instrument type. Tom shared stories about the pieces he had taught over the years, and Lily asked thoughtful questions about the different instruments pictured on the covers. Around noon, the doorbell rang. Tom looked up in surprise. "I'm not expecting anyone." When he opened the door, Alice stood there with a picnic basket. "I thought you two might be hungry," she explained. "Lily texted that you were organizing music all morning." Behind her stood a tall man with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "This is Dave," Alice introduced. "He works with me at the bank. He used to play trumpet in high school and said he'd be willing to help with the music program." Come in," Tom said, wheeling back to make room. "We could use all the help we can get." Soon the small apartment was filled with conversation and laughter as the four of them shared sandwiches and sorted music. Dave proved to know quite a bit about brass instruments, having played all through college in the marching band. "What made you stop?" Tom asked him. Dave shrugged. "Life, I guess. Work, responsibilities. But I've missed it." "It's never too late to start again," Tom said, echoing the words he'd told Lily on their first day of lessons. By the time Lily and Alice left that evening, 3 more volunteers had joined them. A neighbor from Oakwood who had overheard their conversation in the hallway, the delivery person who brought dinner, and a former student of Tom's who had stopped by to drop off concert flyers. "Something special is happening here," Alice observed quietly as she and Lily walked home under the streetlights. "Tom was alone for so long after his wife died. Now look," Lily nodded, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. "He says music brings people together. He's right about that." The night of the concert arrived with a light snowfall that turned the town into a winter wonderland. The high school auditorium, which hadn't been full for a music performance in years, was packed to capacity. Parents, grandparents, neighbors, and community members filled every seat, programs rustling as they found the names of performers they knew. Backstage, Tom moved from student to student in his wheelchair, offering last-minute advice and encouragement. When he reached Lily, who was peering nervously through the curtain at the growing crowd, he squeezed her hand gently. "Remember," he said, "just like we practiced. Think of those snow angels with your grandmother." Lily nodded, too anxious to speak. The principal, a tall woman with a commanding presence, stepped onto the stage to welcome everyone. "Tonight marks the revival of a tradition in our town," she announced. "Many of you remember the wonderful holiday concerts organized by Mr. Tom Wilson during his 42 years as music director here. We are honored to have him back with us tonight, along with a new generation of musicians." The audience applauded warmly as Tom wheeled himself onto the stage. He looked out at the sea of faces, former students, neighbors, friends, and for a moment he was overwhelmed. "Music has always been the heartbeat of this community," he said when the applause died down. "Sometimes the rhythm falters or grows quiet, but it never truly stops. Tonight we celebrate not just the music itself, but the connections it creates between us." He gestured to the side of the stage where Lily stood waiting. 6 weeks ago, a young girl helped an old man stuck in the rain. What neither of us knew then was how that simple act of kindness would ripple outward, touching lives beyond our own. Tonight is the first wave of that ripple. The concert began with Tom playing a beautiful rendition of "What Child Is This" on the grand piano. Though his fingers moved more slowly than they once had, the music flowed with a depth of feeling that brought tears to many eyes. Then it was Lily's turn. She walked to the piano, adjusted the bench just as Tom had taught her, and took a deep breath. When she began to play Silent Night, the simple melody filled the auditorium with surprising clarity and warmth. She played with the confidence of someone who had practiced diligently and the expressiveness of someone who understood what the music meant. In the front row, Alice watched her daughter with pride, aware that something remarkable was unfolding before her eyes. Beside her, Grandma Rose, who had flown in as a surprise for the concert, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. As the last note faded, there was a moment of complete silence before the audience burst into applause. Lily stood and gave a small, careful bow just as Tom had showed her, her face glowing with accomplishment. What no one in the audience could see was the subtle change taking place in that moment. A shy girl discovering her voice, an elderly man reclaiming his purpose, and a community remembering the power of connection. The true miracle was just beginning. Spring sunshine streamed through the windows of the community center music room, warming the weathered keys of an upright piano. 6 months had passed since the holiday concert, and what had begun as a simple act of kindness on a rainy afternoon had transformed into something no one could have predicted. "Try that passage again," Tom suggested, pointing to the sheet music in front of Lily. "Remember to let your wrists relax on the descent." Lily nodded, her face set in concentration as her fingers moved more confidently across the keys. At 10 years old now, after a February birthday, she had grown almost an inch taller since that rainy day, and her playing had advanced well beyond Silent Night. Today she was working on a simplified version of Beethoven's Für Elise, the familiar melody filling the room. Tom watched her with quiet pride. In 6 months, Lily had progressed faster than any student he'd taught in his long career. But the real miracle wasn't just her musical talent. It was everything that had blossomed around them. The door opened, and Alice peeked in. "Sorry to interrupt. The new keyboards just arrived. Dave's helping unload them now. We'll be right there," Tom said, making a note in Lily's music book. "Just finishing up this section." Alice nodded and disappeared back into the hallway where voices and laughter could be heard. "Let's take it from the top once more," Tom suggested. "Then we'll go help with those keyboards." Lily played the piece through, this time with more fluidity, her small hands stretching to reach the intervals. When she finished, she looked up at Tom expectantly. "Beautiful," he said simply. "You're ready for the spring showcase." The spring showcase was just one of many events now on the community calendar. After the success of the holiday concert, interest in music education had surged throughout town. What began as Tom volunteering at the high school had expanded into a community-wide initiative. With support from the town council, the old recreation room at the community center had been converted into a music space with practice rooms and a small performance area. Tom's living room no longer needed to serve as a music studio, though Lily still preferred her lessons at his apartment, a tradition neither wanted to break. Together, they joined the bustle in the main room where volunteers were unboxing electronic keyboards for the new beginner's piano class. 20 children from the elementary school had signed up, many from families who could never have afforded private lessons. There's our star pupil, called Dave, who had not only returned to playing trumpet but had started teaching brass instruments on Tuesday evenings. His friendship with Alice had blossomed over the months as well, with movie nights and coffee dates becoming a regular part of their schedules. Lily blushed at the attention but smiled nonetheless. She was no longer the shy new girl at school. Music had given her confidence that extended beyond the piano bench. She had made friends, joined the school choir, and even started helping younger kids with their first piano exercises. "How's the piece coming along?" asked Mrs. Klein, the community center director who had championed the music program from the beginning. "She's practically ready for Carnegie Hall," Tom replied with a wink at Lily. Mrs. Klein smiled. "I've been meaning to tell you both. The grant proposal was approved. We'll be able to offer full scholarships for summer music camp to 5 students." The news rippled through the room, generating excited conversation. Tom's eyes grew misty as he looked around at what had been created in such a short time. 20 keyboards being unpacked. Bulletin boards covered with concert announcements and sign-up sheets. Volunteers of all ages moving purposefully around the room. "I never imagined this," he said quietly to Alice. "Not in a million years." Alice squeezed his shoulder. "You made it happen, Tom," he shook his head. "No, Lily made it happen when she stopped to help a grumpy old man in the rain." "I heard my name," Lily said, appearing beside them with an armful of instruction books. Tom smiled at her. "Just telling your mom that you started all this?" Lily looked confused. "I didn't start it." "You did by teaching me piano. But you were the one who stopped to help me that day," Tom reminded her. "Most people would have walked right by." Lily shrugged as if the decision had been the most natural thing in the world. "You needed help." The simple statement hung in the air between them, a reminder that the most profound changes often begin with the simplest choices. The afternoon passed in a flurry of activity as they prepared for the next day's classes. Tom moved throughout the space in his wheelchair, offering guidance, checking instruments, and sharing stories with new volunteers. Though he still tired more easily than he'd like to admit, He had more energy than he'd had in years. As the day wound down, Grandma Rose arrived with her suitcase. Having seen how music had transformed her granddaughter's life, she had decided to move back to her hometown after 40 years away. She had found an apartment just 2 buildings down from Tom's and had already volunteered to teach voice lessons. "How was the flight?" Alice asked, embracing her mother. "Too long," Rose said with a smile. "But worth it." She turned to Tom, her eyes warm with memories. "My old piano teacher running the show again. Some things never change." "Some things do," Tom countered, gesturing around the room. "None of this existed 6 months ago." Rose nodded thoughtfully. "When I left this town, the music program was the heart of the community. Then bit by bit, budget cuts changing priorities, it faded away. I never thought I'd see it come back like this." That evening, they gathered at Tom's apartment for dinner. Tom, Lily, Alice, Rose, Dave, and Mrs. Klein. The small space was crowded but cozy as they shared a meal and conversation flowed easily between them. After dinner, as the adults sipped coffee in the living room, Lily wandered to the wall of photographs. Among the faded images of Tom's past students, there were now newer ones. Lily at the holiday concert, the group of volunteers on opening day of the music center, children lined up with recorders for their first lesson. "Looking at the wall of fame?" Tom asked, wheeling up beside her. Lily nodded. "There's so many people. Each one a story," Tom said. "Each one a life touched by music." Lily pointed to a photograph she hadn't noticed before, a young man in a wheelchair at a piano, his face alight with determination. "Who's that?" "That," Tom said softly, "is me. Age 17, after the car accident that put me in my first wheelchair. Doctor said I'd never play again." Lily looked at him with wide eyes. "But you did." "I did. My teacher refused to give up on me. Adapted the techniques, found new ways for me to use the pedals. That's why I became a teacher myself, to pass on what she gave me." "What was her name?" Lily asked. "Miss Henderson?" Tom replied, his voice warm with memory. "Eleanor Henderson. She believed music was a right, not a privilege. Said everyone deserved the chance to make beautiful sounds, no matter their circumstances." Lily considered this. "That's what you're doing now, giving everyone a chance." "We're doing it together," Tom corrected her. "All of us." Later, as the gathering broke up and everyone prepared to leave, the local news came on the television. The anchor's voice caught their attention. "And finally tonight, a remarkable story from our own community. 6 months ago, a chance encounter between a retired music teacher and a young girl has sparked what locals are calling a renaissance of music education in our town." They gathered around the screen, watching in amazement as footage from the music center played, including clips from the holiday concert and interviews with parents. "Thanks to the Music for All initiative," the anchor continued, "over 100 children and adults are now participating in music education programs that didn't exist just 6 months ago. The program has become a model for other communities looking to revitalize their arts education." The final shot showed Lily and Tom at the piano, her small hands following his demonstration, both entirely focused on the music. "Sometimes the biggest miracles start with the smallest acts of kindness," the anchor concluded. "Back to you, Jim." Mrs. Klein clicked off the television and the room fell silent. "Well," Dave finally said, "I guess it's official. You two are famous." Everyone laughed, breaking the moment of awe. As they said their goodbyes at the door, Lily hung back, waiting until the others had stepped into the hallway. "Tom," she said quietly, "do you really think it's a miracle?" "What happened?" Tom considered her question carefully. "There are different kinds of miracles, Lily. Some are dramatic and sudden, the kind people make movies about, but others are quiet, building slowly day by day through small acts of love and kindness." He took her hand, his weathered fingers gentle around her smaller ones. "The miracle isn't that you helped me that day in the rain or that I taught you piano, or even that the music program came back. The miracle is how each small good thing led to another, and another, until hundreds of lives were changed." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Like ripples in a pond." "Exactly like that," Tom agreed. "And we never know how far those ripples will reach or whose lives they'll touch. That's the greatest miracle of all, the power of one small kindness to change the world." As Lily joined her family in the hallway, she looked back at Tom framed in the doorway. the wall of photographs visible behind him, past, present, and future connected by invisible threads of music and kindness. "See you tomorrow," she called. "Tomorrow and all the days after." Tom replied with a smile that held the wisdom of his years and the wonder of new beginnings. The door closed, but the music played on, in classrooms and living rooms, in young hearts and old, a symphony of connection that had begun with the simplest of questions on a rainy afternoon. "Do you need help?"